Hello and welcome to this episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show and podcast. I am your host, Christine Innes, and I'm delighted to have the very beautiful and talented LK Tommi, the Resilience Tutor, joining me today. So welcome.
Thank you so much. This is really great to be on the show, and I'm just so looking forward to connecting with your audience. Because what I particularly love, and I love sharing my passion, which is to tutor young people all around resilience. So I love connecting with young people from 7 to 9 years of age, and I take them through what we call the Resilience Tutoring program. So they get to learn all about their emotions, they get to learn about their thinking, and their energy, and how that connects to every experience that they have, because that is resilience.
Yeah.
When we truly understand ourselves, that is resilience.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because we're in a really ever-changing world right now. And even as adults, we have to sort of quickly adapt. And it's
That's it.
hard because, it's not just even how fast technology is sort of changing, it's just the way that life is, evolving at the moment. So
Yeah.
for people to be resilient, I really think that this is one of the very core characteristics. I'm not sure if that's the right sort of word,
Yeah.
but that people need to really learn to enhance and develop as they grow, because as I said, everything changes so quickly.
Yeah, and I tell that story, when I went to school, I wrote with slate boards and inkwells and sat on long wooden benches, face to the front. When my kids went to school, yep, they took paper and pencil, and they had their own individual desks. When my grandchildren went to school, they took an iPad and had flexible learning environments, and I don't even know what the next generation's actually going to need,
Yeah.
for their education or for their life. But the one thing that's not going to change for them is knowing themselves. And in fact, they're going to need to know themselves more and more, because when we truly connect with ourselves and understand, all about how our brain connects to our body, connects to our energy, our emotions, and our thoughts, and how that all works, because young people just don't get that opportunity to sit down and really think about, how does all of this work? How does all of this connect to every experience that we're having in life? So that's where resilience comes in. So, and I say to young people, I can't stop you from going through tricky life experiences, and nor do I want to, because that's the richness in our lives. Those little tricky life experiences we come along is there for exactly what you said. It teaches us things, strengthens us, it teaches us about us.
Yeah.
But what I do want to see is that they go through those tricky life experiences with grace and ease. They go, oh, I totally understand that. Understand why I had that experience. I get that now. And what actually happens in the brain, because I teach young people about their brain, is it closes the experience loop.
Yeah.
So when people go through lots and lots of tricky life experiences, the experience loop stays open in the brain because the brain hasn't reconciled that yet. And then, of course, when there's too many of those open, the brain gets overwhelmed. I can't do this anymore. So, and that's when it gets frustrated. It gets overwhelmed. So, yeah, it's just exciting. I just totally love it when I
Yeah.
get the opportunity to teach young people.
And do you find that, because what I've seen is obviously, I've gone through so much
Yeah,
literally in my life, that
yeah,
one of the things that I had to learn was literally to learn how to feel again, because I felt like
that's
I
it.
was so numb. I
Mm,
was literally closing myself off because I didn't want to feel anymore. And that's the way that I was able to deal with life. But do you feel that now, as you're starting to teach the younger children, that they're then helping to educate their parents and, the extended family, going, and they're even getting the benefit out of it as well?
Oh, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And where my program is different is that I do it on Zoom. So I have 2 or 3 families online at the same time. So it happens in the home environment,
Mm.
so, and they do get homework, as I call it, or practice, um, things to practice, because it's the practice that helps our brain understand the concepts that we're learning. But they can talk about it better, so they have a different language and a different way of talking in the home environment. And it's a different way of engaging with the children as well. One of my models that I use and I totally love is the PACE model, which stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and engaging. Because when we go into a true play space, you always get aha moments because it frees up the brain. And the brain goes, okay, I haven't been thinking about that problem for the last few minutes. I've been playing, and it resolves it. Then accepting that's where we are at the present moment. This is what we need to be doing, and accepting what's happening for us at the present moment, accepting our emotions, accepting those thoughts. And I don't teach children just about positive thinking. That certainly is an equation. What I do is make sure they understand all aspects of the negative thinking, because it serves a purpose. Positive thinking, when do we need to flip the switch between the two? Same with emotions. Negative emotions are equally as important as positive emotions. But when do we need to flick it? When do we need to flip? Okay, I've been in that negative emotional space for quite some time. I haven't resolved it. I'm going to go get some help. But there's times where we can teach young people that sometimes they just need to put themselves in a different emotional space. So, and that's probably what was missing for you, was not knowing how to go from that emotional space that you were in due to those tricky life experiences. I always call them that, to be able to put yourself into a different space. Type stuff. So it's important, and it's great when we teach kids exactly how to interact and move through all of those different emotions, different thoughts, different life experiences.
Yeah. And I think it is really essential right now. Like, as we said, the world is ever changing, and, different things do happen. And, like we've just experienced, and I know that we're, very unique, and we haven't had to have huge lockdowns like other countries and that have had. But all of a sudden, like, at 12 o'clock, you're in lockdown, and, and now all of a sudden 2 days later, you're okay to do this, but here's the restrictions. And, just learning that and how to actually, I guess, to be adaptive, I think is probably one of the biggest things that this is what you're teaching. And this is what I think is really exciting for it. And it'd be great, and to see what happens in, 10, 15 years, to go, well, look how adaptive they are. Look how resilient they really are in life because of what they've been able to learn to how to connect everything together.
That's right. And one of the things that I really would love to see in society is that we reframe even mental health from the reactive or the negative perspective, because when I became a psychologist, I thought, oh, this is a really dumb profession I've just got myself into, because I actually have to wait for people to have negative life experiences before they can come and see me when, oops, this isn't working for me. And because I was a teacher as well, then I thought, okay, I'm going to create a proactive teaching program, so as we don't have to wait until we have all of these large problems in life, So I'd love to see society around proactive resilience, just a natural way of teaching. And it's not a long, lengthy process. It's not something, once you've learnt it, you've actually learnt it, and then you can use it. So imagine doing that from 9 years of age. I mean, we all learned it when we got older. I was no different. I learned it in my 40s. It is what it is. And that's what got me excited about teaching them from 9 years of age. And I've done that for my grandchildren. They know everything that it is that I know and the way that I teach. And I just watch their little lives and be so creative and be curious about life, rather than just going through the motions of life. Okay, go to school today. What did you learn? Where now they get more involved in what's actually happening for them, which is really, really exciting.
And it really does set them up, doesn't it? Like, I mean, when you think about it, and like if we talk about, like, you said like how it was different when you went to school, even when I went to school. I had no internet when I was at school.
No.
And the kids now rely on it so much, and it's about teaching them to, as you said, to be resilient. Well, what happens when the internet goes down? What happens when the plans change today? Like, heaven forbid that we do a pit stop on the way home somewhere, and they're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Like, something's changed. But it's not just about big life things. It's just the little things as well that they can really handle and be adaptive. And do you think it also allows them to really communicate better with how they're feeling and what their body is going through right now?
Absolutely. And you're totally right. It is all about those little changes along the way. Part of what I teach is change is doing something different. because, and then our brain registers, okay, I'm just doing something different. I can do that now. Where for some young people's, in the way that their brain is organized, that change is really tricky for them. You know, so even those little changes, mum stopping on the way home to get some milk because she forgot it, you know, can create such huge emotional turmoil for our little ones. So, you know, it is about teaching. And that's why in every group that I do it differently, because I understand from where the child's coming, is what the child is experiencing, and then how to move them into the next space for them, and what it is that I need to teach them along the way. So change is something that I might need to teach that young person to start off with, rather than being resilient. I might need to start with understanding their energy, because for our young people sometimes who have like ADHD, what their body hasn't learned yet is to go through from high energy to centered energy to low, from low to high, from low to centered. Their body hasn't learned that yet. And when I teach it from either the body hasn't learned that yet, or the brain hasn't learned that yet. So if we're talking about small amounts of change, the brain hasn't learned yet that it's actually okay, that we're going to be doing something different around about now. But I use language purposefully, because once I reframe from change to doing something different, the brain goes, oh yeah, that does make sense. I can do something different, but I actually don't like the word change. Yeah. So I use language purposely when I teach, and then I hear the language coming from the little ones communicating with their parents, go, that's right, mum, you've got high energy at the present moment and you need to come down to centered energy, you know. It gives you a different way of having different conversations with your children. And you're totally right. They're then able to say, I am feeling sad because, or I keep getting this negative thought around this particular topic, you know, and I've tried to flip my thought, you know, can you help me look at that a little bit more? So they really do come out with different languages and different ways of communicating with us. So we can then have a different conversation coming back, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Like, I really, like, for me, it really is exciting, because none of this was around when my son went to school. And the fact what I had to learn is, by the time he got to high school, it dawned, like, I shouldn't say that it dawned on me. Like, I then became, like, went through and became a learning development specialist. So I learned all about adult learning. I'm like going, well, if adults learn differently, why don't kids learn differently? And why we try to pigeonhole them all as one? So
right.
Learning styles are different. And it's the same with them, even, you know, everybody is uniquely different. And how we learn, how we, you know, are receptive to change, how we're receptive to language, how we're receptive to behaviors. All of this is teaching us, you know, what you're doing is teaching us how to, I guess, to co-communicate, you know, in, you know, a similar type of language, but getting different sort of, you know, results, I guess, in a way from it.
And getting different understandings from it as well, because first we understand something, then we learn something. So, and that's what I'd love to see is, you know, getting the children to have their understanding of what's happening in their body or their brain, or understanding their emotions and their thoughts, then learning about it. Sometimes we just go to the understanding without fully taking it out to the learning. So what have you learned through that tricky life experience? What have you learned through not being able to take your emotions from negative and positive? So, because that's when we fully close the loop for them, and then they continuously and get excited about what they've actually learned from tricky life experiences. Like, I have young people come to me now and says, I had this amazing tricky life experience, but this is what I learned from it. And I go, how cool are you?
Yeah.
That conversation certainly didn't happen in any of our eras, you know, that we didn't celebrate our tricky life experiences and how it made us stronger and what we actually learned from it.
Yeah. And I really love that, because, you know, this is one of the key things that, you know, I focus on, is that, first of all, you know, I've learned to, I say I own my story, because by owning that story and taking that responsibility for it, you know, it gives you the power back into it. But everything that we go through, we have to learn from it. And like you said, it's not just pushing it aside. It's actually going, well, what can I learn from it? You can either learn to say, well, I didn't like how I reacted in that situation, or, you know, how this all transpired. You know, there is so many learning lessons into life. And I think that's where the personal growth really comes from. And it's exciting. Like for me, I'm like super excited. I'm like going, I feel like I've had 10 coffees already, like from it. But,
Yeah.
it's sort of like, well, imagine what that's going to do for kids. Like you
That's
said,
right.
they're going to go, okay, well, I'm faced with this obstacle. And instead of running away from it, they're going to go, I'm equipped to now go
Yeah.
through that and to
Yeah.
learn from it.
Yeah. And we see young people have tricky social situations all the time, tricky playground social situations. So it's really hard for some of our young people, and some rightly or wrongly, because we're looking at safety here, sometimes we take young people out of the playgrounds and then we teach them what they need to know, and then see if they can put those skills into practice when they go back into the playground as well, which is a really exciting part of that teaching process. And that's what I love about being a teacher and a psychologist, because I can actually take them through a full teaching process to get them to understand what they're actually learning in that process. And they do get excited when they're successful. They feel so much better about themselves. They're so much more confident, they're so much more successful. And they literally do get excited, and come up to me all the time and say, this is really great. Look how successful I was, and you're just growing their self-esteem, you're growing them as a person. And this is what our journey as a human and as a person is supposed to look like. Life wasn't meant to be tricky. Life is actually meant to be fun. We've got ourselves into this tricky space because we haven't learnt about it yet.
Yeah.
So, but let's have more fun in life rather than more trickiness. But getting them to combine the two with tricky and fun at the same time just gets me very excited.
Yeah. Oh, I love what you're doing. Like, honestly, I am super excited of just the lives that you're changing. And I know the
That's
ripple
it.
effect that it's having, not just with these young people, but how it's changing families, how it's changing just even the wider, generations as well that, are connected to them as well. Because, I do believe that this is where we need to be. And, as life continues to change and evolve, that whole resilience is going to be the key factor for everybody.
Yeah. And, like when young people go through their academic skills and that becomes tricky for them, so they struggle in English or maths, they go off to be tutored for that, so they can develop those skills and then go, yep, okay, I can get an A now, or I can go and get this job, whatever I want now, because my English and math skills are quite good. So that's where now I've created the Resilience Tutoring program, so as I can tutor children who have different social and emotional development or skills, because as you said, we all learn differently. All our brains are wired differently. That's what's the exciting part of this journey and this world is. So therefore, then what I'd love to do, the exciting part for me is to teach them those social and emotional skills that they just haven't learned yet, or they haven't understood yet. And then that way we can enhance their development, enhance their skills, and then they can go off and have those life experiences that they want to have and have awesome social interactions with people. And I had to learn that from a young age, because from a young age, I wasn't socialization for me was a very tricky thing to do. I had very low language development as well. And so therefore I had low language skills. I had really a tricky understanding being in social situations, and knowing what to say in social situations was really tricky for me because I hadn't learned that yet. So working with those young people who haven't learned the skill yet and teaching them the skill, watching them to use the skill, is really cool.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. And as I said, I'm so excited for, what you're doing and how it's, as I said, it's going to have just a beautiful ripple effect around it. So what are the age groups that you mainly work with?
Okay, so I do a variety of different groups. I do work with 7-year-old children as well. So depending on what the situation is, sometimes the parents come in with those sessions with the 7-year-olds as well, because their brain hasn't developed some of those skills yet. So sometimes they work with the parent, they work with the child. Then the 9-year-olds from 9 years upwards, that's when we all hop onto Zoom. And that way we go through the Resilience Tutoring program. So I teach them the skill a week. So I teach them either the skill of thinking, the skill of energy, the skill of emotions. We connect that by the time we finish the 6-week course. We connect that to all the experiences they have in life. So I do a lot of explicit teaching as I go across, but I connect each skill as we do it as well over the 6 weeks. So, and you know, that can be for a whole family. So like my
Mm.
pricing isn't for an individual child. So if you've got 4 children, mum and dad in the house, it's one price. So, which is the beauty of being able to use this technology of Zoom, because everybody can join in. But if you go across to a psychologist or someone like that, you're actually they will actually charge you an individual price often rather than a family price. I do it in groups online because it's the power of people understanding that we're all learning the same thing. You know, it's normalizing. Johnny hasn't learned this yet. Sally hasn't learned this yet. And the kids just end up coming together in a beautiful way and an amazing connection. And they just learn together and they want to share. The power of sharing is amazing because they do want to share. Okay, I did this, I learned this, and I've now done this. So we always have sharing time for people to share and connect with what they've learned. So my program goes for 6 weeks. And then sometimes children come back because they want to refine or learn a little bit more. So sometimes they come back into the groups again if they'd like to. Others don't come back into groups. They might go on to a different program with me because they're still curious about learning about themselves. So, yep, anybody from 9 years of ages and upwards, either individuals or families. It's really cool.
I love it. I am going to pop all of the details of how they'll be able to reach out to you below.
Great.
I really, such, you know, a big believer in what you're doing and really love it. And I just know that this is going to create so many more, you know, just, I don't know, beautiful conversations, I think is the biggest thing is that we're going to get out of that. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here today and sharing what you do and, you know, sharing your passion with this at all. And I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to pop all the details, how you can get in touch with LK below. And then in addition to that, if you've got any questions about this episode, please pop them below and we'll reach out and we'll answer them as well for you. So thank you so much for being here today and to sharing your passion and also what you're doing to help really, you know, change all of these beautiful young children's lives.
Yeah. And my mantra is creating generations, creating lives one step at a time. Just love it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you to everyone who has joined us for this episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show. Remember to live life to the fullest and to follow your passion. Love and light, everybody.